replay this video later on. I'm sure many of you have watched this again, but we want to make sure that we replay this when the program is over. So let's get started. We announced we're going to start at 9:45, so I want to honor your time here. Good morning, everyone. It's great to see all of you. Good morning. My name is Mark. I have the honor of representing Fairfax County and the House of Delegates here. And I'm very excited today to be joined by so many of my colleagues from the House, Senate, as well as so many of our citizens and citizen activists, and those that are the most important stakeholders in this conversation. So first, thank you and welcome you to your state's capital.
Thank you.
Let me also do something that's somewhat unusual for a press conference. We're going to start by asking, we have a distinguished guest here, Pastor Paul Wilson. We're going to ask him to just start this program with a quick opening invocation. And for those of you who know about Pastor Paul, you'll know why him being here is such a significant moment, but we'll explain after his invocation, if that's okay. Thank you, Pastor. I didn't know that I was saying it.
Thank you, Father God, as we lay our petitions at your throne, knowing that you will answer by the authority of your Son, Jesus. You gave us dominion over the land, Father God, and that's why we're here, for the land, for the air, and for the water. We thank you for those brave supporters who have been fighting down through the years, and we ask for your continued guidance. We thank you for our legislators who stand with us. More coming every day. We pray, Father God, that our governor will do the right thing.
Here, here.
We pray for a successful day. We thank you, Father God, as we travel up and down the highways. And most of us are not being compensated monetarily because that's not what we're about. We're about what you are about. And that's about this earth that you have created.
That's right.
We're also about souls, Father God, but the land must be saved as well. We love you and we honor you. We ask for your complete guidance, your direction. Might we truly interpret, Father God, what we're doing. Might we cause others to know that this whole project about the pipelines and the water lines, about coal and ash, all of this is about greed.
That's right.
It's about money.
That's right.
And Father God, we want to put an end to it right now.
That's right.
And we claim victory in the name of Jesus.
That's right.
Continue to go with us. It is in that name that we claim this. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much, Pastor. So for the folks who haven't had a chance to meet Pastor Paul Wilson, he's a pastor of the Union Hill Baptist Church in Buckingham County. And his church and the congregation and a lot of his neighbors and friends that he serves are in the crosshairs of this pipeline that we're talking about. There are two projects, as you all know, and as part of the pipeline that's been proposed, the company that's developing this wants to put in compressors. And in the traditional way, they'll put a lot of small compressors all the way around to move the gas going. But they decided that they'll just have one massive compressor, and it would be right next to his church. And it happens to be the most historic and the most poverty-stricken and historically African-American place that was settled by freed slaves.
That's
and
right.
so for Pastors Paul and so many others to raise these multi-dimensional concerns, we thank you for being here and for raising your voice and for making sure that we all understand that this isn't just about one project that's going to have one impact. It's about multiple projects having multiple impacts in so many different ways. And that's why we're here this morning. We're here mainly to raise awareness of what's happening. For those of us who are in the state legislature, we haven't had the opportunity yet to really engage because we frankly didn't have legislation or a policy issue that was in front of us for us to take a vote on. But we're all aware of what's been happening. But it wasn't until recently when this issue became a little bit more in the headlines that we started thinking, what is our role? And some of us oppose pipelines. Some of us don't know enough yet to know how we can stop this from going forward. But all of us here are standing with those of you who raised the concerns over the last few months. And as I was thinking about how we got to where we are today, that we have some companies, based on profit motives and other reasons, proposed an unnecessary project approved by the federal government on a partisan line vote, and some of the negotiations were done in a back room, behind closed doors, without transparency, So you could say this project was done in a not so transparent public way as we deserve. But when I was reminded by something that was told to us a couple of years ago by a former First Lady, Michelle Obama. She used to say, when they go low, we go high.
Go high.
So when we see backroom deals and self-serving, profit-motivated contracts, and we see companies that are not necessarily upfront about their motivations, and when we see our environment being put second to the needs of people and our health, we see a lot of low-level activities going on. But it's time for us to take this higher.
That's right.
And it wasn't until some of your protesters, some of our citizens, decided to take it all the way up to the top of a tree.
That's right.
Top of a mountain.
That's right.
That when they raise themselves high, that's when the nation and the Commonwealth and your lawmakers started also paying a lot more attention as well. So we're here today to take our part to raise this profile higher. And unlike my House and Senate colleagues here, who are honored to hold public office, we have somebody else who has a higher office than we do. So as they go low, all of you have gone high, going up with red, up in the trees. We're now going to take this to the next level, and we're going to go higher to our higher level of office. So we're here today asking, urging, demanding that our good friend Ralph Northam and his agencies, as well as his law enforcement agencies, work with us, not against us, work with us to find common ground, find a good issue. That's what it's about, but to help you understand why this is so important, why there's so many aspects of this issue, and why more and more of us are joining and standing with Red and so many others. I'm so pleased and honored to be joined by some of my colleagues. I'm going to go in a kind of a different order based on who's here now, because it turns out there's a couple of committee meetings going on as well. So I'm going to turn this over to my good friend and colleague from the Senate, just to show that we've got senators and House members here. Chad Peterson, who's led the fight for the last few years on a lot of issues.
A lot of issues.
Yeah, a lot of issues. So, Chad first, and then
Wow, this is really cool, and Pastor Paul, thank you. You actually spoke 18 months ago at the Nelson Community Center when I was there with Hank Howell, and we were speaking at the town hall that we had on this issue. There's so much to say, and I've kind of made my bones the last couple of years calling into question the whole idea of having a public monopoly that provides electricity and what the incentives are, whether that's, frankly, a 21st century way we want to go. I don't believe that is the way we want to go, but that's the system we're stuck with right now. The pipelines, quite frankly, have been called into question the last couple of years, whether we need them, whether environmentally they make sense, whether or not the fossil fuels that they will transport are even necessary for today's economy. And quite frankly, these questions were not asked when this was approved 4, 5, 6 years ago, when it was proposed by the previous governor. And people now are getting smart. They're getting smart. Now, I'm here both as a state senator and also as a lawyer that has defended property rights for years. This is kind of a weird confluence of public policy trends, because we have strong support for environmentalism in this room. We also have strong support for people having property and having rights with property. And those strains are coming together. You got folks from both sides of the aisle who see this as a strong issue, and I know it's a Democrat. Thank you. And, listen, I've been down to Nelson County, so I'm not under any illusion that everyone thinks the same on every issue, but I know they're thinking the same on this issue, and that's what counts. So, Mark, I want to thank you for bringing this together. I think, yes, the governor needs to be involved. Yes, state agencies need to be involved. And who do I need to do next?
Why don't we turn it over to a group of freshmen? And by the way, for many of you who've been out there working for the last few months and years to help change the dynamic of this body that we're in, thank you for sending us amazing new colleagues.
Absolutely.
Group of colleagues who've joined us. Some of them will say a few words, others may be coming in and out, so we'll just kind of play it by ear as far as our schedule. But let me start by asking Jennifer Carroll Foy, who's a colleague of ours from Prince William, just to say a few words, and then I'll see if there's anybody else in the freshman class that we can ask to say a few words. So, Jen, come on up.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. My name is Jennifer Carroll Foy, and I represent the 2nd District, which is Prince William and Stafford. Now, I'm here today because I stand for clean water.
Yes.
And I'm here today because I stand for not poisoning our soil.
Yes.
I want to protect our environment for my kids and yours.
Yes.
And in order to do that, we have to be principled. We have to dig in our heels and say what's right and what's not right. When people put profits over us, we have to call it like it is.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
We have to say no to these pipelines.
Yes.
And I stand with the people in my community who say that this is not necessary,
That's right.
that we have to protect our environment.
That's right.
Now I stand with Red, and I ask, will you stand with us?
Yes. Don Adams from not that far from this area.
My name is Dawn Adams, and I represent parts of Richmond, northern Chesterfield, and Henrico. We have the beautiful James River that runs through the district. And I apologize for reading. This is my first press conference, and I want to make sure that I get across my thoughts clearly. It is an honor to be here with my colleagues and all of the advocates for the environment. Something that I take very seriously as a new policy maker is that I do thorough research on whatever the issue is at hand. If you're one of my constituents, you probably know that from my communication. As a nurse practitioner and a researcher, I'm particularly concerned with the health implications and wanted to investigate for myself in the most unbiased way as possible the correlation between contaminated water and the proximity of methane gas from pipelines. And what I can tell you is this: there is a tremendous amount of inconclusive and incomplete scientific information.
That's right.
Research shows that methane can be flammable in contaminated water supplies, and at the same time experts report that methane is not known to be a health hazard when ingested, even though subjective reports say otherwise. And we've heard of symptoms from headaches and dizziness to nausea and nervous system symptoms. We do not know the long-term effects for many people, but there's a great deal of concern based on the subjective report. The EPA has stated that there are conditions associated with fracking that can impact drinking water, and that there are gaps in the data and an uncertainty about the impacts locally and nationally. Yet the U.S. EPA does not regulate methane levels, nor does it provide criteria or standards. U.S. researchers, however, have found that water wells, were not situated in places that would best reflect contamination to the shallow groundwater. And yet, even in Canada, they mandate that groundwater wells be tested up to 5 miles away from methane gas.
That's right. Yes.
After analyzing best methods to assess the impact of methane on our water supply, U.S. researchers have found that stream analysis was the best watershed scale method to assess groundwater contamination from shale gas development. So my point here is this: the federal government has said that it doesn't have enough information to understand the impact of methane seepage and contamination, and it doesn't have guidelines for monitoring our local water. So I ask you, is it really in the best interest of the Commonwealth to leave oversight to the federal government?
No.
What the U.S. does have are known best practices, which is stream analysis. If Virginia is charged with this analysis, led by our governor, who, through his unique role as a physician, truly understands the health and cost benefits of prevention, we will have better assurances that the water we drink and the water that we give our children to drink every day is safer. Thank you.
Water is life! Water is life!
Thank you. And next, we're going to have Delegate Lee Carter from Prince William County.
I'm going to keep this real short. When the government takes land through eminent domain, it's supposed to be reserved for something where there's a compelling public interest.
Yes.
Yes. But where's the compelling public interest?
None.
Where's the compelling public interest in turning the water that folks drink in our neighboring states into this?
Disgusting.
Where's the compelling public interest in a pipeline that's going to make as many jobs as an Applebee's, and we're going to have to pay $2 billion for it. Where is the compelling public interest in turning hundreds of miles of Virginia into what's known as an incineration zone if that pipeline should burst? Where is the compelling public interest in this project? I haven't seen it, and I don't think it exists. Thank you.
All right, so we have a number of other freshman members who've joined us, and given the time, if they want to say a few words, I'd love to have them do it. If not, we're going to move on to some of our older members. And, but just to recognize that the members that are here, among the freshmen, we have Elizabeth Guzman, also from Prince William. And Danica Rome as well from Prince William. And we've got this young guy over there. You're going to hear from him a little bit later, but Chris Hurst is also with us. All right, so among the folks that have been around for a little bit longer, let me single out my good friend Marcus Simon. He helped start the awareness, especially but across the state, by talking about the injustice that he's seeing with what's happening with Red Terry and other protesters. So, Marcus, will you come on up?
Sure. I was moved by what I saw, and also by some constituents of mine. Marcus said I represent the 53rd district, which is Falls Church, which is pretty far from the pipelines. But the images of watching our police officers in Roanoke and folks have to deal with this decision, hey, how do we handle somebody who's up there protesting, exercising some civil disobedience? Do we starve her out? Do we deny her water and food to get her down? Do we go and get her? Do we cut the tree out from underneath her? I mean, what do we do? That is no position to put our public officials in. Particularly, you know, I understand the importance of the rule of law and that we have eminent domain, we have easement rules and things like that. But at the same time, we had rules about where this tree cutting was supposed to go, when it was supposed to start, and when it was supposed to end. If we're not going to enforce the rules for everybody uniformly, we've got to be careful about how we do this. We need to have a process that's reasonable, that makes sense, make sure what's happening is necessary, is in the public interest, and we really don't want to put Virginia public officials in the position that they're in when we have somebody who's just exercising their rights, their civil disobedience. Want to make sure that they get themselves heard, which is what Red is doing. So I stand with Red. Hopefully we can come up with a process that works for everybody to figure out these and get the answers to these questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we have a lot of Marks in this room here. We've got another one, Mark Levine from Alexandria.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Mark Levine, I represent Alexandria, Arlington, and a piece of Fairfax. I am also far away from this pipeline. And I've tried not to repeat the wonderful words that my colleagues have said. I'll just talk about something else. I want to talk about fracking.
Oh, yes.
So what this pipeline does is it encourages more fracking, right?
Yes.
That's
right.
More natural gas and other things that come from fracking.
That's right.
And fracking is a really dangerous thing that is causing all kinds of problems that we don't even know all the problems that it's causing.
Yes.
I know that Oklahoma used to be a state with very few earthquakes. Now Oklahoma is having hundreds of earthquakes.
That's right.
That's because they're damaging the substrate underneath Oklahoma.
That's
We
right.
know that in fracking they are injecting chemicals, and they won't even tell us what they are, down deep into our wells, deep into our water supply that can leach into other water supplies. This is the kind of damage that we won't even know until it's too late, until there are health problems. So in addition to all the other things my colleagues have mentioned, let's say no to pipelines, because let's say no to fracking, let's say no to...
Thank you.
I'm pleased to introduce you to one of my good friends, Alfonso Lopez, who also, in addition to being a member from Arlington County, he also heads our Virginia Energy Environmental Renewable Energy Caucus. There's a lot of different words in there.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Alfonso Lopez. I represent the 49th District, which is South Arlington, Eastern Fairfax. And I'm also proud to have been the founder and the co-chair, currently the co-chair of the Virginia Environment Renewable Energy Caucus. You know, the fact is that my friend Sam Rasul and I put an op-ed in the Roanoke Times basically talking about the economics of these pipelines and why it doesn't make economic sense and they're essentially unnecessary. And I always go back to the same old saw that we should be investing more and with more money, more time, more resources into renewable energy.
Yes.
We're behind North Carolina in terms of solar. We're behind Maryland in terms of energy efficiency. We're behind West Virginia. Repeat that. West Virginia in terms of wind power. The Commonwealth of Virginia should be behind no one. We should be the leader in the Mid-Atlantic for wind off the coast, solar in the valley, hydrokinetic in our rivers. And the best place in America to grow switchgrass is Martinsville, Virginia, a place in desperate need of agriculture jobs.
Oh, yes. That's right.
Think about the tens of thousands of jobs and the hundreds of millions of dollars we are leaving on the table every year for the Commonwealth of Virginia. Now, with regard to what's going on right now, we hope and we urge the governor to do everything in his power and the DEQ to do everything in their power to conduct a full, on-the-ground, stream-by-stream analysis of Mountain Valley and the Atlantic Coast pipelines. Also, please look into what's happening with the felling of trees as it relates to the Migratory Bird Act as well as the Endangered Species Act.
That's right. Yes.
Here we go.
Right now.
Thank you for your activism. Thank you for what you've done.
Thank
I stand with Red. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alfonso, for your leadership. You'll be hearing more from Alfonso and the colleagues of that caucus because they're doing a lot of work, especially they're working with our governor to make sure that he does what we ask him to do. But in the meantime, let me turn this over to a couple of gentlemen who represent the area that we were talking about in particular. I'm in the Northern Virginia area. Most of our colleagues here are from Northern Virginia or Hampton, the Richmond area, so we don't have as close of a proximity as many of you have. But we have three gentlemen here who represent the Roanoke Valley area. We have Senator John Edwards, we have Deputy Senator Sewell, and we have Delegate Chris First. I'll ask the three of them to come together, and I think Chris is going to do a little, I don't know, some tech stuff, but Chris has some pictures to show in his presentation. After that, we're going to hear from a couple of our friends in the grassroots activist movement, and then we'll open up the Q&A, so we want to make sure that we're respecting your time, right?
My name is Chris Hurst. I'm the delegate for the 12th District, which includes all of Giles County and part of Montgomery County, directly impacted by the Mountain Valley Pipeline. It is something that I've said time and again to landowners and to activists who have been in this fight for many years, that I am not going to try and take any credit for all of the amazing work and advocacy that they've done, that we stand on their shoulders. I'm very glad to be here this morning to see so many of my fellow colleagues from unimpacted areas now joining with this fight. It is not too late. Help we can possibly get, and so I thank them for their leadership as well. As the representative for the 12th District, I've personally surveyed the land already subject to tree clearing. These are pictures that we've taken and initial land disturbing activity. There you see a stream crossing on Little Stony Creek in Giles County and the trees that have gone down underneath it. And there we have what brings us all here today. And that, I think, is the real tragedy of what's going on. That kind of response of law enforcement just for civil disobedience. And, and something that I frankly believe MVP has full authority to get her the provisions that she needs. The sight of trees cut is certainly dismaying to many of my constituents impacted by the pipeline, but it's the apparent lack of oversight that has me most deeply concerned. While the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission has been on site, isn't that ironic, and found already instances of non-compliance, our state agencies charged with safeguarding our clean water, clean air, and soil have only had referrals of potential issues. The oversight, however, has been centralized to offices here in Richmond, more than 3 hours away. My landowners want to know this. Where is the oversight? Where is the monitoring? It's been through the tireless work of citizens to create a website, GIS mapping technology, and an app for landowners on their phone to take pictures of potential violations and send them to DEQ. Called Mountain Valley Watch. The people who should be watching this is our Department of Environmental Quality. Let me be clear. It should not be up to landowners who have already had their land taken through invalid eminent domain procedures to make sure Mountain Valley Pipeline LLC does its job correctly. it should be our state agencies who lead that effort.
Yes.
I'm here today not only to continue to demand for a site-specific waterway analysis and for the humane treatment of peaceful protesters, but also for additional requests. Namely, that DEQ should be on site consistently as construction begins. That the VMRC, the Virginia Marine Resource Commission, should clarify which waterways should be open cut and which should be drilled underneath. Little Stony Creek, the landowner there, Sean Hash in Giles County, has documentation, and I've seen it too, that is conflicting whether or not they're going to drill underneath or open cut. But what the person on the ground from Mountain Valley Pipeline has said is that it has always been their intention to open cut straight through that Tier 3 protected waterway that is now a natural trout fishery, and it is going to decimate the potential to be able to fish in that creek, and it's on his property that he has had for many years. We also are asking for an odorant to be added to the gas upon completion of the pipeline to directly warn landowners of a potential leak. That is happening with the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. It's not happening for the Mountain Valley Pipeline. It's not currently federally required. But the Atlantic Coast Pipeline is going to put it in. Mountain Valley Pipeline is not. I think Mountain Valley Pipeline should put in that odorant, that mercaptan, so that when landowners are fearful of a potential explosion, that at least they can have some reassurance that they would be able to smell that leak if it were to occur.
If they actually build.
Pipeline
to put that smell.
We also need to make sure that historic areas like the Greater Newport Historic District should be avoided at all costs. And if impossible to accommodate, a fund should be increased to $2 million to aid in the repair for this pipeline that could cause historically significant structures and communities to be destroyed. So again, I am very pleased that we have now a lot of help from Northern Virginia. We have more recruits in this fight. More people have and we are also seeing more openings to be able to actually have our stewards of our water do their job. We saw last week that the State Water Control Board is open to reviewing again this idea of let's have ownership of our site-by-site, our stream-by-stream analysis. Let's make sure that we, as a Commonwealth, have ownership of our water. Let's not just give it to blanket, tacit approval to the Army Corps of Engineers. Let's make sure that we control our water, we control our future, and we make sure that we have the most strict analysis done, and that it's not just fluff, that we actually mean what we say. Thank you very much.
First of all, thank you, Delegate Mark Keene, for organizing this. Thank you, Anna, for being here. I'm delighted to be here with a delegate for Roanoke City, Delegate Sam Rasool and Chris Hurst, who represents Montgomery and other Giles and other parts of my district as well. My district, the 21st Senate District, I'm John Edwards, by the way, is Roanoke City, Roanoke County, Montgomery, and Giles County. All four of those districts, every single one of them, the supervisors and the city council have come out against the pipeline. Every single one of them. That's because it's ruining our way of life. I'm here to stand up for good water, clean water. There are many people in my district who live there and rely upon well water. And they love the clean, pristine well water. The well water may probably will be contaminated.
Oh, it will.
If this goes through. It's almost a certainty. I'm also concerned about the safety. These 42-inch pipelines, no one's ever built pipelines of this length. They're huge. They're gigantic. And if there's a spark, a break, and they do leak all the time, and they need to be fixed all the time. And if you have an earthquake, and we've had earthquakes in this area, and a spark, you're going to have the biggest explosion and forest fire you can ever imagine.
Oh, yeah.
That's a public safety issue. So there are numerous reasons to oppose this pipeline. You know, private profits should not trump our pristine environment.
Yes.
Should not trump human life.
That's right.
This is a very serious issue, and I call upon DEQ to extend the comment period so that we can fully analyze, and DEQ can fully analyze the environmental impact. And I appreciate y'all coming here for the environment and for clean water, but also I appreciate your being here for RED. 61-year-old courageous woman who's doing what is traditional in America. Nonviolent protests. Martin Luther King Jr. told us how to protest in a nonviolent fashion. She's climbed this tree, and she's being treated in an inhumane fashion by not giving her food and water. That is outrageous. Let me tell you, as a former JAG officer in the United States Marine Corps, if you're put in solitary for 3 days, you at least get bread and water for 3 days.
That's right.
At least bread and water. If you're in the prisons of the Commonwealth, you would get food and water.
That's right.
She hadn't been convicted of anything, and she's being treated in an inhumane fashion. I think it's outrageous.
Shame.
Law enforcement.
Shame.
That's not in the tradition of the United States of America. We should be outraged by that.
Yes, we are.
Thank you all for being here and bringing to the attention of the governor and to the General Assembly and everybody in this country and in this Commonwealth the inhumane fashion in which she is being treated. Let's make sure she at least gets her bread and her food and water. I mean, you can't live without food and water, right?
That's right.
And for standing up in the courageous fashion in which she is being doing. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again, Mark, and for somebody who had some wonderful comments. I'm batting a little bit of cleanup to make sure that there's a few points that we all are on the same page. So with Red, there's a separate stand for her daughter named Minor. So there are two of them. So a younger daughter who is also being, provisions are being withheld from her. They probably, can make it a couple more days or so. I just think that this is inhumane for sure. That's number one. Number two, while this land is far away from a lot of folks, let me tell you pragmatically what's going to happen is the Roanoke River feeds the water that comes into the Roanoke Valley. And we, as a landowner, as a person who lives in the Roanoke Valley, I'm joining a lawsuit against the State Water Control Board and DEQ.
Thank you.
Because a large percentage of my personal drinking water is going to be impacted because the Roanoke River is going to be crossed in its tributaries over 100 times by this pipeline. So it's not just a few random folks up on some mountain somewhere who are upset that their local water might get hit. We're talking about private wells, large public wells, surface water through the Roanoke River that's going to impact the entire Roanoke Valley, and our groundwater because of the karst Swiss cheese topography that we're dealing with. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people who might have to deal with something like this one way or another. So it's clear with this comment period that there are some action items that can be taken. Many people ask, what can we be doing?
Yes.
Number one, many of you have heard some of the slight good news from last week, the State Water Control Board saying that they would like a 30-day comment period on their ability to be able to review the individual stream-by-stream crossing. Well, what we need to be able to do is to put pressure for sure there, but what we also can do is we can ask DEQ to suspend the 401 certification.
That's right. That's right.
During this comment period. This is something very specific, which wouldn't stop the felling, but it will stop the clearing of the soil. So that's very important. And then, moving forward, we want to, of course, make sure, as Delegate Lopez had mentioned earlier, that each stream is analyzed. And we know, with that analysis, that we will show that what the MVP, which the company is called EQT. The EQT executive said himself, it will be an engineering marvel to bring the largest pipeline over Virginia mountains. We know it's going to be a disaster, as we've seen in Pennsylvania, in Iowa, and many other states. We've got to stop this pipeline.
Time. We just want to hear from a couple more people. One is to close out. We started with our freshman class, and with one of our freshman members just saying a few words. And then we've got a couple of folks representing the area, citizen activists, and then we'll open up some Q&As, and then we'll try to get out of here by 10:30 since we have caucus meetings. So, Danica Rome.
My name is Delegate Danica Rome. I represent the people of the city of Manassas Park and the Prince William County portions of Manassas, Gainesville, and Haymarket. And up our way, we know a little something about taking on powerful utilities. But I'm here for one very, very, very particular reason. One, to tell you that, look, like I said last year, I studied the same this year. I'm a property rights Democrat. I'm an environmentally friendly Democrat. And this is clearly bad for both. There's no question.
That's right.
And on the third end of this, we are one Commonwealth. We do not get into this Nova versus Rova BS. We don't isolate Southwestern Virginia. We don't isolate Hampton Roads. We don't isolate Richmond. We don't isolate the Valley. We don't isolate Northern Virginia. We are one Commonwealth. And when something happens to Southwestern Virginia, people in Northern Virginia, it is our obligation to stand with them.
That's right.
When I'm back home and I'm in the legislature saying I need some help fixing Route 28, who am I going to be asking? My friends from Southwestern Virginia, anyone else. And when they're saying, hey, we got this problem of inhumane treatment to someone, when we got a problem of without the basic necessity for a project being proven yet, then it's my job to show up here as well and say, like, I stand with you because of the people who you represent. This is about our constituents. Each of us represents our own constituents, our own districts, and at the same time, we all represent the Commonwealth of Virginia, and that's why we have to be united together, and that's why we have to have the same voice together, and that's why we stand together and we stand with Red.
All right. I'm going to ask a couple of our friends who helped organize this. They were the ones that really pulled everybody together. So let me have John and come on up. Come on up, and then after that, we'll just open up the Q&As, and then we'll try to get out of here by 10:30. All right? Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm so excited to be here. My name is Jonathan Sokolow. I'm not an elected official. I'm a lowly attorney. I'm a writer. I'm an activist. And I'm here on behalf of the Northern Virginia Pipeline Action Group. I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to all of the state representatives here, particularly the ones from Northern Virginia who've decided to speak out for environmental justice. This is a game-changing day for Virginia, for the pipeline fight, for the fight for justice, for the fight for the environment, for the fight for our water. I want to give a special thank you to Delegate Martine for bringing us here. I want to say thank you to Pastor Paul Wilson. I was telling him earlier, he's the reason I'm here. He's the reason I'm here, because what's happening in Union Hill, which he has been speaking eloquently about for years, is terrible. An 85% African-American community founded by freed slaves, as Delegate Keene pointed out so well, is going to be destroyed by the compressor station, 53,000 horsepower compressor station, unprecedented. They usually put compressor stations every 40 to 100 miles. There's exactly one compressor station in all of Virginia, and I think the pipeline, the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, goes about 300 miles. 85% of that community is African American. The compressor station runs, but the electricity that they use, the power to generate it, is by burning the methane in the pipes. By burning the methane in the pipes. So you're talking about benzene, you're talking about particulate matter, you're talking about methane, you're talking about people with asthma, chronic conditions. They're going to be adversely affected. The two churches that Pastor Paul pastors at are within a mile of this compressor station. I just think it needs to be said as plainly as possible. With what has been going on in this country in the past year or so, destroying an African American community in Virginia is simply unacceptable. I also want to say that don't believe the hype. Dominion and EQT would have you believe that this is a done deal. They've been saying it's a done deal before it was a deal. Okay? Well, we need to say clearly, and everybody here I know agrees, these pipelines can be stopped, they should be stopped, and they will be stopped. The Northern Virginia Pipeline Action Group wants to salute everybody who's here, and we particularly want to salute the heroes, Red being chief among them. Let me tell you something. Dominion and EQT will tell you that it's not possible to make change. Red has been up in that tree since Easter. She, let me say this, she is the reason we are all here. She's the reason that Delegate Simon spoke out. She's the reason that Delegate Keem, Delegate Boysko, others spoke out, Delegate Plum, my own delegate, because starving somebody in Virginia is unacceptable in the 21st century. You're exercising your First Amendment right to protest in your own tree, on your own land. So this is an example of how things can be done. Finally, I just want to say, the bottom line is this. Under Section 401 of the Clean Water Act, the state has the power, which it is not exercising, to conduct a stream-by-stream analysis of both the Mountain Valley and the Atlantic Coast Pipeline.
That's right.
This is what we demand. The people of Virginia deserve no less, because water is life. Life must be protected stream by stream.
Stream by stream. Stream by stream. Stream by stream.
Good morning. My name is Genesis Chapman. I grew up on Benton Mountain. Benton Mountain is my home, and I think as all of us as Virginians know what that means. I am here to tell you right now, my community is under siege, but thank you so much for being here. I am humbled and inspired to these delegates who are here to publicly show their support to fight to protect Virginia's pristine mountain waters and demand the dignity and fair treatment of the peaceful landowners who are doing all that is left in their power to stop this monstrosity that these pipelines represent. You have the power to ensure that the Commonwealth demand protection for Bottom Creek, a Tier 3 stream. You have the power to demand that each and every stream crossing requires an individual permit, and the Army Corps of Engineers permit does not go nearly far enough to protect Virginia's water sources that lay in the path of this beast. Private corporate gain should not be permitted to destroy our citizens' right to clean water.
That's right.
And I do say this too right now. They're blasting through my neighborhood as we speak this morning. You know, 30 days is great. A stop order is needed before the damage is done. They are trying to run this through as fast as they can. So I have spent the last week camped out under Red's tree with her. Yesterday morning it was 24 degrees and spitting snow. And I've been visiting her daughter Miner's stand a few hundred yards away, and it is surreal. These are the woods and streams that I have played in for the last 40 years, and I take my daughter to swim in that creek. It is bizarre to be camped out there to ensure Red and her daughter's dignity and safety. Dozens of other neighbors, friends, new and old, people I'd like to say from all walks of life, have joined their family to support them by camping out each night. I have known the Terry family almost all of my life. My wife and I were married in a field right there on their property. And I have to say, when we went and talked to the Terrys, I said, I'd like to get married in the buckwheat field. There was no question of them saying no, and there was no question of them even asking for money. They just wanted to come and have a good time with us, and we did. By helping this out-of-state pipeline from the peaceful protest of a 60-year-old mother, Roanoke County and the Virginia State Police have decided to withhold food and water unless her and her daughter give up this fight to save the property which has been in their family for 7 generations. I have seen this. The other night, they are spotlighted at night like animals. In the state of Virginia, spotlighting deer is legal. But in Roanoke County, is it all right to spotlight a mother and her daughter?
No.
A few days ago, Miner's cell phone charger fell out of the tree stand and the police scooped it up. Her father, who is worried out of his mind, asked the police to permit him to send it back up and was denied. This father has been denied the right to speak to his daughter and ensure that she is safe. They have talked about bringing jobs into Virginia and in this region. But all I have seen are out-of-state bumper license plates for out-of-state contractors, and a father who is worrying for the safety of his daughter who cannot even speak to her. You can do something. My Benton Mountain community has hope. You can demand that the Roanoke County Police and the state police permit these peaceful tree sitters access to the things all decent and a decent and caring society should expect.
Thank you for being here.
I do want to say, MVP has brought so much pain and suffering to my community. Do not let this be Virginia's legacy. And can I have one more thing?
Oh, absolutely.
The Terry family has a great sense of humor. And there's a lot of joking about stuff. And one of the things that they've been saying and is, you know, growing up in Virginia, you hear this statement a lot, the South will rise again, right? But I don't think they ever knew it was going to be by a woman 35 feet up in a tree.
Listen, we are about out of time. Let's just wrap things up here. First of all, I want to thank all of our colleagues, House and Senate members who came to join us today. I want to thank John and Lee Williams here, as well as others. And obviously, I want to thank you, but I want you to understand this. Until now, and it's kind of ironic that we started with a pastor talking about the guy giving us dominion over this land, and closing with a gentleman whose name happens to be Genesis. I think it's fitting that we're reflecting on the Mother Earth that we have been given, not by us, not by some government, not by some private entity, but by something much greater than that. And so this land, the trees, the water, and the air does not belong to us. It belongs to somebody else. And so for us as stewards, we have to focus on that. Now, what can we do? Until yesterday, MVP claimed our land, and our water, and our air, and our dignity, and our integrity of our protesters. But starting today, we reclaim that.
Yes.
Starting today, we're going to fight for our water, we're going to fight for our trees, our land, we're going to fight for our air, and we're going to fight so that our elected officials will do their job by scrutinizing every statute, every regulation within our state's laws to see what we can do to stop this, slow these down, scrutinize it, make sure that whatever happens at the end is a thing that we have given input on, not the other way around. And finally, we've thrown around the name Mountain Valley Pipeline along with the Atlantic Coast. The word MVP should no longer be used for them because they're nothing close to what an MVP should be. The word MVP belongs to Red, her daughter Meyer, and everybody else stood up. So all of you here today are the real most valued players. So from today on, let's reclaim the word MVP, use it for yourselves. And with that, I'm going to ask if the press has any questions. And if you do, we'll stick around. I mean, we can answer a couple questions now. If members have to go to caucus, we certainly understand if you have to sneak out. But the rest of us will stick around for a little bit longer. Any press first before question? Yes.
Have any of the lawmakers here, either individually or collectively, talked with the Northam administration about the water quality process request, and what was the reception?
I've spoken directly to the governor. He's a scientist who lives in Accomack, which is he believes in climate change, and he's pledged to look at the science. That's all I can say. You need to ask him further. I've spoken with him personally. I've hand-delivered letters that have been given to me by constituents, and so he's well aware, as far as I'm aware, of the issues.
I was going to say, I signed off on a letter, it was, I believe, last week, which had to do with asking them to use DEQ to take a second look at the pipeline, particularly in terms of the water quality issues. Obviously, that is the open issue right now, and that's the avenue from which you can get involved directly right now.
Yeah, and the governor and his staff know that we're doing this, and our demands are very, very specific, and they've received that, and they will continue to receive that, because all of you have actually been saying this. It's not just elected officials telling them what's going on. You all have been speaking out all this time. We just need the response from them. Any other questions from the press? Yes, correct.
We're not in regular session, but is there a legislative, any kind of legislation you intend to introduce to address this, the caucus can get behind in 2019?
Between Sam, John, and me, we introduced 8 pieces of legislation that didn't make it out of subcommittee or committee. I think that squarely the onus now is on our state agencies who have it within their purview to be able to take action, and we implore them to do so.
Yes, yes.
Just as a side note, it's ironic that a lot of times when we say that we have the Virginia way, we follow the Virginia way, which means that we like to do things our way. We don't like the federal government telling us what to do. In fact, yesterday, if some of you watched our special session on the budget, you heard certain members of the other parties saying, we don't want the federal government ramming down the health care down our throats, our people's throats. Well, guess what? If the alleged health care benefits that we want our state to have comes from the federal authority, why is it okay for the federal government through FERC to ram down these pipelines down our throats? We have to be consistent. There are laws and regulations that we already have that the state can enforce on our own. That's what we're asking our government to do. That's what we're asking our agencies to do, is look at our state laws. Don't contract this out to the federal government.
We have one more question right here.
Patricia Stansbury, Richmond Independent Radio. Is there some way to do a stop order? I mean, can the governor just suddenly see the light and say, let's not do this?
Yeah, so there were actually a couple of Senate bills that were passed during the regular session that give DEQ the authority to issue stop work orders if there is non-compliant tree cutting that will cause stormwater runoff issues, which obviously this will. The governor actually did the right thing. He sent those back to us by adding emergency clauses to them, so that instead of having to wait till July 1st for DEQ to have that authority, they got that authority immediately when those laws took effect. So, you know, it's interesting that the governor sent those back to us to make them stronger, and he's not directing DEQ to use them. So the authority is there. It's up to DEQ to actually issue those stop work orders, because clearly we have a stormwater runoff problem with all this tree clearing activity, and those stop work orders would definitely be able to.
Stop work now!
There's one other avenue, and that is, we've talked a little bit about eminent domain. Eminent domain is reserved in Virginia for Virginia public utility companies.
That's right.
Now, ACP was a Delaware LLC, and I was part of a legal team that challenged in court whether they even had the constitutional ability to use the eminent domain powers. That was ruled against us by the Virginia Supreme Court on what I believe was a technical basis. That could easily come back again, but that has been one means of just challenging whether or not these companies even have the constitutional basis to take your land.
So in light of the time here, why don't we wrap this up for now, and then we'll stay, everybody here who wants to stick around as long as we want, we'll talk to all of you. But again, thank you for what you've done to come out here and let us know about these concerns. We're with you, we stand with Red, and we stand with all the other protesters, but above all, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that our governor and his executive branch agencies do their job. So thank you once again, and I look forward to it.